everybody. Welcome to Two Off the First. It is June 17th, 2024. I'm Ryan Balaji. Thanks for being here. We're going to recap the U.S. Open today. It's great to have you here with us. Second live stream show, so thanks for being here wherever you're watching or listening, catching us after the fact as well. Do this as a podcast if you'd like to listen to it rather than watch me each day on our live streams. So we got plenty to talk about. I feel like for a show that's supposed to have two topics, we kind of have two different sets of topics, right? Two different battles, effectively, of the last couple of days, particularly of Sunday. And that is Bryson versus Rory, and then Bryson versus himself. And in a way, the Bryson that we've seen this year particularly, but really since he's moved to live, that guy versus the guy that left the PGA Tour in a very different place in his life. So let's first talk about the action on Sunday, and then we'll kind of get into the meta existential type of stuff. But Sunday was wonderful. You couldn't have asked for a whole lot better. Hopefully you had a great Father's Day. I played 9 holes with my son in the middle of the afternoon, and I'm glad that I did, because I'm not exactly sure I would have been able to take the drama particularly well. I mean, there was a lot of up and down, but McIlroy makes his run in the back 9 after starting the day 3 back, gets himself into position, takes a 2-shot lead with a handful of holes to go, and you go, okay, this is it. The 10-year drought is over. He's here. This is the moment. He's taken the lead. He hasn't had it given to him, although Bryson certainly struggled off the tee on Sunday, and we'll talk about that. But then he goes and does mysterious things. Gets himself in position on, 16, misses a 2.5-footer, straight tug, which, I mean, we've all done it. If you've ever played competitive golf, you have missed a putt like that. You've never done it with the national championship, 10 years of drought and agony on the line, and like he did. But a straight tug on 16, finds the bunker on the par 3 17th, but gets up and down, a very admirable up and down. Gets to 18, pulls the tee shot a little bit, winds up in an unfortunate situation by a tuft of grass. Was really lucky that the ball knuckled like it did to get to where it did, just short of the green, and really just knuckled out, rolled forward, and put him in a position to get up and down. It's a pretty decent chip, leaves him a little above the hole, which you really never want to be at a major championship venue, but particularly a place with his greens playing as fast as Pinehurst number 2 did. And then boots a 3-foot 9-inch putt. And between the two putts, the 2.5-footer is the one that absolutely should have gone in, right? That wasn't a hard one. He had been basically 500 out of 500 on the PGA Tour this year in 3-foot putts, and then misses that one. But the one that he missed on 18, I think, is worth dissecting for a couple of different reasons. One, because it had a lot of break to it. I mean, he was looking a cup outside on the left, and it slid even a little bit more than that. That's not an easy putt. I know a lot of right-handers prefer a left to right putt. I'm the opposite. I prefer a right to left putt. But he left it, 6 inches out there, 5 inches out there off of the edge on the left side, but he didn't hit it hard enough. Slid off on the right, cut across the hole on him, and then makes a bogey that, given the situation, I think is inexplicable for a couple of different reasons. One, 18 is not that long of a hole. He could have hit a long iron out there. He could have hit a fairway metal out there. He did not have to bang the driver and hit it into a position where all of that stuff could have come into play. Now, he's been a great driver of the golf ball, probably drove it the best you've ever seen it all week. So I think that's an excusable mistake, given that he had so much confidence in the club and was really just phenomenal with it all week. So why are you going to back off of that now in this situation? I understand the thinking about it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the thinking about it. But then the putt on 18, he had to be thinking about what happened a couple holes prior, thinking about that 2.5-footer. That was a straight pull. There's no doubt about it. That was a straight pull. There's no other way to describe it. And so you get over this putt, you read it from all sides, you go, all right, this thing's going to move. It's going to move quite a bit. And if it moves quite a bit, then you've got to think about what you just did, right? There's no way he wasn't thinking, all right, well, if I tug this, I may pull it a little bit more, then it's definitely going to go in. The other thought I think that he had, and someday he may talk about this, but I think he had to have considered the miss, which that seems kind of weird to think about, because it's probably at the time, if he makes 4 and he knows Bryson's in trouble off the tee, he doesn't know exactly, but he knows he's in trouble off the tee. If he makes par Bryson almost certainly makes the mistake, whatever it is, whether it goes in that bunker or goes somewhere else. He's going to make 5, maybe even 6 if he feels desperate enough. And you're in a playoff. You're in a 2-hole aggregate score playoff with a guy you can drive it as far as, and you've got to feel comfortable with your chances in a 2-hole aggregate score. And instead, I think he thought about the comebacker. I think he thought, well, if I miss this, this could go way by, and I can miss that, and then everything's done. And so I think 2 things happen on the putt itself, technically speaking. So McIlroy has this tendency when he hits short putts, and Jane Crafter, former LPGA player, announcer, great person, had some really interesting thoughts on this, and I've seen it too. So I kind of feel somewhat validated in saying this. But when McIlroy hits short putts, he has this tendency to kind of leave the face a little bit higher. He kind of hits up on it instead of straight through with it, which I think is really important to do on a short putt. And when you open it up like that, you kind of open the face a little bit. And by opening the face, you kind of leave yourself to a little flare, a little extra loft. I mean, it was close to a top on the putt. I mean, I wouldn't call it a cold top kind of thing, but he hit it on the upswing instead of just kind of straight through, which is really how you're supposed to bang those in. That led to it going open. That probably flared it open a little bit, and that was it. And just making a mess of it. 3 bogeys coming into the house when he had this thing in hand in the final 4 holes. I mean, he was there with a 2-shot lead. Now, to Bryson's credit, he made the mistake too, made the 3-putt mistake, which really which made McIlroy in 16 even more shocking because the door had been wide open at that point. It was just get to the house and you win this thing. But to Bryson's credit, and throughout the course of the weekend, he did a very good job of recovering when he made mistakes. An excellent job of recovering when he made mistakes. And the tee shot on 17 was tremendous. He knew it was great the second that he hit it. The putt probably could have just as easily gone in as it came up short. That's one of those types of putts at that mid-range, especially that speed. 14, probably 14 and a half, really, if we're being candid on the stimp meter. But 14 and a half, it just kind of skids a lot. You're trying to figure out how much it skids and then how much it starts to roll. And just came up a little bit short. But then on 18, I think Bryson makes sense to hit driver. He is a driver. Like, this is how he plays. He is mega aggressive. So is McIlroy. But pelts a volunteer and looked like either the thigh or the crotch. Pretty sure it's thigh. Bounces off, gets near a root under a magnolia. Kudos to the walking official with the RNA who said, no, you're not getting temporary immovable object relief from the grandstand or the scoreboard, which is alongside the 18th fairway there, Pinehurst No. 2. You got to play the shot. And I think that was an interesting point that came up in conversation after the fact that because, and this happened with Johnson Wagner, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but in the conversation with Johnson Wagner, Bryson talked about or was asked about the importance of having a 6-iron length, 7-iron length wedge, because that made it a little bit different trying to put a swing on the wedge with the tree in the way, because then you don't have to take it back as far. You get the same kind of energy return versus something that's maybe an inch shorter, inch and a half shorter even, but probably closer to an inch. And then you've got to really kind of muscle up a little bit. It's harder to make that swing. You probably clip the tree. You may not even make it to that bunker. And maybe the tournament outcome's a little bit different. He gets into the bunker. That's a shot that really you're going to get up and down from less than 5% of the time, really probably less than 3% of the time. And then here he comes. He gets it to 4 feet. It was incredible. I mean, that he executed that shot, got a good bounce out of there with the first bounce off with the spin, and set himself up for what turned out to be a pretty straightforward championship winning putt. And Bryson DeChambeau is a 2-time U.S. Open champion. That I think a lot of people thought was a possibility at the start of the week. He's been playing very good golf in the majors this year. I think if you look at the major returns so far this year, he's the best player in the majors. Had a chance to win the Masters, had a chance to win the PGA T6 in second, and then wins the U.S. Open. You look at Scotty, who did not have the best week this week, obviously won the Masters T8 with an asterisk and an arrest and a felony charge at Valhalla. And then you got to look at Xander Schauffele, who's been great in the majors this year. Obviously win, and then a T8 here, which was quite good after a Saturday that was lackluster. But Bryson's been the best player in the majors, and it showed. And for McIlroy, now he has to kind of rue what happened here? And I I know that Rory has a lot of detractors, a lot of people who are, especially if you're kind of pro live or whatever, that you kind of want to see him fail. I'm not one of those people. I'm generally not rooting for people to fail. There are some people I root for to fail, but we won't talk about that here. But for McIlroy, it's in it. It was on his racket, as they would say in tennis. I mean, it was in his hands to win this thing, and he just did it. It just wasn't there. It was, and it's maddening that it happens on short putts, right? But that is also McIlroy's biggest problem, other than maybe short irons, which is also kind of maddening. But to miss a 2.5 footer that was basically straight in the hole is, from his perspective, not from mine. I mean, who am I to judge? But for him, that's got to feel unforgivable to himself. I mean, to miss something that simple that pros hit in practice 100 times a day before a round, just to kind of make sure they've got that stroke calibrated. And to miss in that moment was a big opportunity lost. If that goes in, 17 feels different for Bryson. Um, 18 certainly feels a little bit more desperate. But I think the other thing I thought about too, and there's some great comments about this, response to some of my tweets yesterday, that if the positions were reversed, right? If McIlroy was in the last group and Bryson was playing in front of him, I think McIlroy approaches the 72nd hole completely differently, even though in the moment they are tied, because he knows all he's got to do is make a par, and the odds are he's in a playoff, right? If he makes birdie, he wins. So that's a little bit of a different feeling, I think, than he thought, because Bryson was playing better in 16, 17, and he was in full view of all of those shots. He could see and hear most of those shots, especially the one on 17, standing on the tee on 18, seeing it come in, going, dang it, he's good. He's got something here. He can make that. I've got to do something here. I've got to apply pressure back on him, because the pressure had swung the other way, right? Because of the bogey on 16, and going, okay, well, I've got to take a step forward. He's not going to come back to me, given the way that he hits the shot on 17. And then everything goes down like it did. If he's 3 feet underneath the hole, he probably makes that par putt. We're playing a 2-hole aggregate score playoff, and it's a different story. But there you go. Bryson's a 2-time U.S. Open champion. This may be, I have no idea what's supposed to. So there's reporting out there that on Tuesday there's going to be a announcement of some kind of term sheet, tentative deal, whatever it is, between the PGA Tour and the Public Investment Fund. That, of course, could get nixed. That could be bad reporting. Who knows? But if that happens, I feel like that starts to usher in the end of this era that we are in right now between Live and the PGA Tour as we know it. Maybe it comes back under some dual umbrella, but it's coming back together probably in some fashion if everything that's been indicated turns out to be true. And I think if you look back on this era, these last couple of years, I think your big winner is Bryson DeChambeau. And I don't even think it's close. And I mean, in terms financially speaking, John Rahm's probably the big winner, right? I mean, he got the most money in the end to go to Live. But I think your big winner is Bryson. And that's for a couple of reasons, right? He revamped himself as a player. He realized that the way he had bulked up in the 2020 era led to injuries, led to him feeling less healthy. It wasn't sustainable. He couldn't be a 260-pound golfer forever. He's not built to be that way. So he found a way to slim down. He had time to confront the injuries that came not only from playing professional golf, but also bulking up and trying to get to that size so he could chase speed. He found a smarter way to chase speed. He still hits the ever-living hell out of the ball, 190, 195 kind of ball speed. That's remarkable. That's incredible. He still can do that, but now he can do it in a more sustainable looking frame, and he can maintain that. I think he has found something in the team format that, while it seems contrived to a lot of people, seems to matter to him. I think he likes having people on a team, even though golf is an individual sport. And yeah, they don't get like any of the $4.3 million that he won, but having Paul Casey and having Charles Howell III and what's Anirban Lahiri, I think, is the other guy on the team. the Crushers team, which, by the way, is a whole patently ridiculous logo thing. I mean, that is insane and crazy. But having people to root for you and root with and play along with. And then, of course, he's got a huge team anyway because he's got this live franchise and a budget to do it. So he can go hire a guy that, manages things for him and has a caddy, has a spray bottle guy, has a guy who carries his crap. I mean, he's got a team. And I think that means a lot to him. Also, his father passed away. I'm sure that had a substantial impact on how he thinks about the importance of golf, the importance of life. But I can't help but have some sense of cynicism about the guy, right? And I think that's the thing I'm battling with, because there were a lot of people who wanted to embrace Bryson on Saturday and Sunday and back at the PGA too. And I think a big part of that is Bryson has realized that to appeal to people, you just have to do some simple things very well. You have to look like you're having a good time. He's having a great time out there. It looks like he's having a great time out there. Every fist pump. I mean, he even did the Phil thumbs up at one point. I was like, oh man, he's taking pointers from Lefty on this. He turned to the crowd. I mean, he would find any grandstand that he could when something went right and just kind of gave him the look like he would, I went to the University of Maryland. Gary Williams, when he always came in for basketball games, whether it was Cole Fieldhouse or Comcast Center, he would come in, he'd come out from under the tunnel, and they'd play a song for him, and he'd look toward the student section and raise his fist like that. And everyone lost their crap, even though he was ready to play the game, even though he probably went and hit a large bucket of balls and played 9 holes before the game that day. They just wanted intensity, something to love. And the fans wanted that at Pinehurst, and they embraced that. And then Bryson did the kind of right things that you're supposed to do, which is sign an autograph in the middle of the round. Most people don't do that. He high-fived a special needs kid. He told kids afterwards, signing pictures, taking autographs, you can do this too. You just got to work really hard for it. And all of those things are wonderful. They're really nice. And I'm not saying that Bryson doesn't believe those things and Bryson is being fake or anything. But I also don't know. I don't know him personally, and neither do any of us, really. And I think that's the thing I always worry about is people can be smitten with someone they don't know. These kind of parasocial relationships that we have in sports where for decades people are like, Phil Mickelson's the greatest. He's so nice. And when I was young, I thought about that too. Like, Phil's so great. He works so hard. He loves the fans. And then, Live happened and he became persona non grata. Well, this isn't the exact same playbook, but it's a similar idea. Give the people what they want. Let them see that you embrace them and they'll reciprocate it. I mean, he took the U.S. Open trophy around and was letting people touch it. He was taking pictures with everybody. He went on live from as Johnson Wagner was trying to recreate that 55-yard bunker shot. Gave him a little bit of coaching, and Johnson Wagner hits it to 2 feet. They celebrated like Johnson Wagner had won the U.S. Open. They let him hold the trophy like he had won, which, by the way, Johnson Wagner did win the U.S. Open, and that's canon. He was fantastic. We can talk about him another time. But Bryson's turnaround, whether it's PR, whether it's genuine, whether it's a mix of both, the turnaround is very simple. Stop saying the weird stuff. Don't talk about your science stuff or your 3D printed irons or your single length, on your irons. Don't talk about how, the curvature of your driver, stuff like that. You could be as nerdy as you want to be. Just don't talk about it. Just give people what they want, which is energy and happiness and excitement. And you're going to come out with a whole lot more fans. And that's what he has come out of here with. Will it be like this forever? I have no idea. But if he maintains this kind of public persona, then he probably will stick with it for a long time. But then you have to contrast that with the fact that Bryson's agent with GSE got mad at Damon Hack right behind the 18th hole on Saturday, mad at how NBC and Golf Channel had covered Bryson. And I know that's an agent's job, is to kind of be a prick. But that's happening as on the other side, Bryson's kissing babies and waving and smiling and basically being a politician. So you're going to have to pardon me for being somewhat skeptical that this is all genuine, but some of it's also genuine. I where that line is, I couldn't tell you. Um, I guess you just have to kind of play the long game with it. But to the theory that Bryson was kind of this misunderstood guy, and some people have liked to use the autism spectrum as some kind of explanation for it or crutch. I'm not going to get into that argument here. I don't think that's necessary. But I, I think Bryson may have been misunderstood, or maybe Bryson misunderstood. Not that he was misunderstood, but he misunderstood what people wanted from him. That when he went to SMU, and he didn't go to SMU for Payne Stewart, by the way. He didn't wear the Ben Hogan hat for Payne Stewart. It was for Ben Hogan, and that's okay. You can make up your own myth making. But when he went to SMU, he was a different guy. He wanted to be different. He wanted to be unique, and he thought that was by the way that he played, the equipment that he carried, the way that he dressed himself, and that was kind of what made Ben Hogan unique, that he had a very gruff personality and that he was kind of inaccessible and hard to know and very hard to kind of penetrate in terms of that kind of icy stare and personality. That I think it's somewhere along the way, Bryson realized that wasn't the guy I want to be. I want to be more like Arnold Palmer. I want people to think I am daring and aggressive and I hit the ball far and I'm not afraid to do it. I'm not afraid to take chances and entertain them and make them feel like they got their money worth by seeing this freak athlete go out there and play a sport. And the way that he plays is very compelling. It's unique and interesting. So I think he has kind of dialed that in and realized the less I say about anything else, the better. And he's figured out how to be somewhat self-effacing about the have some salt and the salty thanks for the salty balls question, stuff like that. He's figured that out. Less of that, less of the technical pseudoscience garbage, more of just being the guy that hits the snot of the ball and makes putts and entertains people. So there's that. And then you've got McIlroy. And I don't even know where you go from here if you're him. Do you even play Travelers this week? Do you even consider playing Travelers this week? I mean, the look on his face in the scoring room, watching him lose, right? I mean, just hands on hips and then bent over at the scoring table underneath, in the clubhouse, just heartbreaking kind of stuff. And he knew it was in his hands and that he let it slip by. And then I think there's this back and forth now of, well, should he have done a press conference? Should he have shaken Bryson's hand? Should he have talked to NBC about the whole thing? Part of me, as a media person, right, you kind of have this thought of, well, you got to face up to the music. This is your obligation. You're supposed to talk to us and tell us how you feel, blah, blah. And on one hand, I feel that way. On the other hand, I think the exact opposite. There is no obligation, right? There is no formal set of rules that you have to do this or do that. It's kind of up to you, but how people react to that is then up to them. And I feel like in this situation, it would have been better had McIlroy, at least shaken Bryson's hand. I mean, Bryson, after losing the PGA and what was a very thrilling finish, goes up to Xander, says congratulations. That there's that visual, and then you have McIlroy leaving, going in the Lexus vehicle in the parking lot, sort of peeling out, but not really. It was just gravel issues. But leaving very quickly, doesn't talk to the press, doesn't talk to NBC. That's a bad look, I guess. And I think people have properly kind of roasted him for saying, well, Norman talked to the media for a half hour after losing the 96 Masters, right? Phil has owned up to his mistakes over and over. I mean, he talked about what an idiot he was at Winged Foot. The John Van de Velde is still talking 25 years later about choking away the claret jug and the British Open. I feel like you're supposed to say something. And maybe if he plays this week, he will do just that. And he will talk about it. And in typical Rory fashion, when he makes a boo-boo, he has I probably should have done something differently. And he'll issue his mea culpa. But also at the same time, what are we going to get out of him that is better than him just walking away and making it plainly obvious he is truly devastated, right? I mean, no offense to Damon Hacker, whoever else would have interviewed him for SiriusXM or otherwise. the folks in the media center. What will we have gotten out of him other than, man, I wish I made those putts? I mean, we could have gotten maybe perhaps a technical explanation of what he thought went wrong. I don't know. I think we've pretty much covered that here. What else can he say? Congratulations to Bryson. I hope I get another crack at this. You're going to ask him about being runner-up back-to-back years in the U.S. Open. That happened to Jim Furyk in 06 and 07. And, Jim Furyk answered those questions, maybe a different scale, right? He had just won the U.S. Open 3 and 4 years prior. But I don't want to kind of try to come down from on top of my mighty cloud and say, Rory's a horrible person because he didn't talk to us that one time. Because he spent the last several years talking to us about anything and everything related to LIV, the Saudis, the PGA Tour. He's said what he's had to say. He's been very public with his jabs. He's changed his stance slightly and significantly at times on things, and he's put that out into the public. He's talked after good rounds and bad. In the main, I can't crucify the guy, right? I just can't get there. Again, trying to take a long-term view of things, not only of McIlroy, but of Bryson and who he has and who he is and who he's been. You got to take a long-term view of those things. I think we're better off taking the long-term view on those things. So let's see what McIlroy says if he plays this week. I'm, again, assuming he's going to play. I think he would have withdrawn by now if he had no intent to play. They'll talk and we'll move on. Will he ever get over it? I don't think so. And then I kind of tweeted about this last night. I don't think Rory will ever get over this. And some people responded, oh, yeah, he will. He'll win again. And those are very different concepts. Winning again and getting over something are two very different things. When I mean he'll never get over this, I mean he will think about this at least once a week, every day, every week for the rest of his life. Maybe once a day. Doug Sanders had this great interview years ago. He booted a very similar length putt to McIlroy to win the Open Championship, right? And I can't remember the exact quote anymore, but I'm pretty sure he was talking to Peter Kessler at the time. And he said, I go a good 15 minutes without thinking about it. That kind of stuff lives with you. Now, McIlroy's got 4 majors, right? He's got an incredible career. He's one of the best golfers who's ever played professional golf. It's not Doug Sanders who would get in his one and only major and would change his life similarly. But still, that's going to be in his craw. I mean, that's going to bother him. He's going to think about it. He's going to wonder about that. I mean, add that to 2011, the dour walk from 18 into the locker room. So then I will never forget witnessing in person. The U.S. Open last year, St. Andrews when Cam Smith won. He had that in hand until he didn't. You've got this. He's got a lot of close calls. I mean, he had a chance against Patrick Reed at Augusta in 18? And Patrick Reed just smacked him down and we were done there. He's got a lot of those things. You may be able to, you move on with your life, right? I mean, there's other things going on in life. Obviously, he's had his marriage in a tumultuous situation, and files for divorce, takes it back for whatever reason. So he's got that going on. He's got a marriage and a family to save. He's got rumors swirling around who he's with or who he's not with. He's got the whole thing about being on the transaction committee. So he's meeting with the Saudis, but he's got people on this board that probably don't feel the same as he does. He's got the constant onslaught of just being in the public sphere of that debate for the last 2 years. There's a lot going on here that probably supersedes in the long haul what happened on the last 4 holes on Sunday at Pinehurst No. 2. But he's never going to get over. He's never going to be comfortable with that he lost that day, that yesterday. That'll never happen. Could he win another major? Yes. And credit to Bryson for saying, I think that he can win multiple. That is the kind of sportsman-like thing to say, is he's going to get his and that day's going to come. And I think part of that is golfer superstition, kind of like paying it forward. However, and McIlroy could do it in 25 days or 24 days now. He could be the open golfer, the champion golfer of the year at Troon. It absolutely can happen. And it would be pretty cool if that happened. But even if he wins that one, or another one, or 2 more just like it, he's not going to forget the last 2 years of this championship. and the opportunities that passed him by. He should have easily beaten Wyndham Clark, and he should have easily won this thing. But for different reasons, he didn't. And at some point, there will be a conversation about all those things someday. But I don't know where that leaves McIlroy's legacy. Is that as a guy who is great, but he's just great. He was great early. I don't know, but if you look at the span of 20 major championships, he's basically been a fixture in the top 10 or 15 of all of them. You can't ask for a whole lot more than that, except wins. And if you don't produce the wins, that's what you're judged upon. Not being consistent, not second place finishes. When people talk about Jack Nicklaus, they talk about him as an 18-time major champion. Not also as an 18-time champion, but a 55-time first, second, or third place finisher in a major. Very few people talk about that second part, that he had 37 second and third place finishes in majors. Because in the grand scheme, they don't matter. So what McIlroy has to figure out is, how do you move ahead? How do you become the guy that you want to be as a competitor for the remaining 10 years of your relevancy? And how do you figure out how to get one of these majors in the next basically 40 to get a fifth? All right, it's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I appreciate it. Appreciate the feedback on the live shows. If you got any, we'll take it. Try to figure out how to do this thing. We should have our press release coming out probably tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, with our official TV announcement. So that's very exciting. We got in candor, got a couple of releases to share, but the first one, the big one, kind of plant the stake in the ground release is tomorrow. And then off we go. So we got a big week ahead. We're going to try to do this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then leave Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to the actual golf that you want to watch. And then we'll expand that over time. But hopefully you tune in with us. I'm trying to think of a good time to do this. I think like between 9 and 10 a.m. is good for me most days. 10 a.m. Eastern is good for me most days, but for everybody else, especially the West Coast, 6 a.m. is not so accessible. Noon's pretty good here, but also not so great if you want to go play golf. So we'll dial in the right time and give you a better regular schedule for these things if you want to catch them live, or if you want to catch them on replay, you do whatever the heck you want. Back tomorrow with another show. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. If everything that's been put out there as being on the docket tomorrow, it will be a nosebleed kind of show in terms of the amount of stuff we're going to have to consider about the future of professional golf. But hey, plans change, things get canceled. Let's address it when we get there. You can email me, Ryan@thegolfnewsnet.com, on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, at Ryan Ballengee, Facebook and YouTube, Ryan Ballengee Golf. And Golf Newsnet is on all of those services at the handle Golf Newsnet. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 2 off the first.